Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to keep going in the Warriors Corner. Our guest speaker for the next segment is Colonel Eric P. Shirley. But before he gets started, we have some opening remarks by Major General Dwayne Gamble, Commanding General, ASC.
Okay, so welcome to everybody. Today, Colonel Shirley is going to talk to you about what an Army Field Support Brigade does. It's AMC's single tactical face to the field. So my purpose is just to tell you that I want you to ask hard questions of Eric, and then I'll be here to bail them out. So in my estimation, AMC's credibility, I've got 32 years in the Army. AMC's credibility today is stronger than it's ever been in my 32-year career. It's because AMC has provided decisive capability to our Army and building readiness as partners in readiness with our tactical Army. And we're doing that across 7 AFSBs that are globally, 3 in CONUS, 4 OCONUS. And they are the funnel, the prism through which the light and the power of AMC, shines on the operational force. So we do Army preposition stocks, LOGCAP. We run LRCs, both CONUS and OCONUS, where we build home station readiness. We do force projection. We're also the lead material integrator for the United States Army, so we execute the Army's equipping priorities and build readiness in a EOH, equipment on hand way. So those are just some of the capstone things that happen every day in the AFSBs with small staffs and gifted leaders like Colonel Shirley. So he's going to walk you through that. So I'd ask you to think as he's talking and ask him some hard questions. I told him less words, more pictures. So we're really relying on you to ask hard questions and talk to about how do we enable outload, how do we enable readiness. And if you think that the audio and video don't line up, please call us on it, right? And give us a chance to change your opinion if you have a divergent opinion. So over to you, Colonel Shirley.
Well, sir, thank you very much. And what a great day to be a soldier. I'm very glad to have everyone here today so I can help to articulate in a little more detail some of the points our commanding general pointed out. I appreciate this opportunity. We're going to talk to you about how Army Materiel Command, and specifically how Army Sustainment Command and Army Field Support Brigades generate and deliver material readiness at the operational and tactical points of need. AUSA's annual meeting is just a great time to reflect on why our nation's Army exists. As we've heard the Chief say, we're here to provide prompt and sustained land power around the world to defend our homeland, our national interests, to deter conflict and where deterrence fails, to fight decisively and win anywhere and any time. Pictured here is a great example of our Army in motion. The recent outload of the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division, from our power projection platform at Fort Riley, Kansas. This unit is now currently deployed in support of Atlantic Resolve in Europe. Among our major Army commands, Training and Doctrine Command provide those trained and ready leaders. Forces Command provides the trained and ready formations, and Army Materiel Command delivers material readiness in all of its facets, from the factory to the foxhole. If a soldier wears it, communicates with it, drives it, or flies it, Army Materiel Command delivers and sustains it. My goal today is to help you visualize how Army Materiel Command is operationalizing sustainment for the Army around the world, and how Army Sustainment Command is serving as a spearhead for those critical efforts. Next slide, please. This is the agenda I'll use. As the boss said, more words, less pictures, more words, and I will try to depict for you. It's probably a Freudian slip. How the Army Sustainment Command, as well as Army Materiel Command, we are nested fully in our commander's visions in synchronizing, integrating, and delivering material readiness for our warfighters. We'll provide an overview of the organizations that create the material enterprise, and I'll discuss how Army Field Support Brigades located around the world support home station training, deployment, and employment by our combatant commanders. I'll incorporate vignettes of how we support our total Army force to include our Army National Guard Brigades, Army Reserve, and how we are delivering readiness for the current fight, but also working with the ASALT community, Army Test and Evaluation Command, to prepare for the future. And then finally, I'll ensure that we save some time. We're joined here today by current and former brigade commanders for Army Field Support Brigades. We look forward to your questions. Next slide, please. Our AMC Commander, General Gus Perna, absolutely lockstep with the Secretary and the Chief of Staff's priorities on delivering readiness for the current fight. and generating readiness for tomorrow's challenges, all while taking care of our most important resource, our workforce and their families. For those not familiar with Army Materiel Command, this worldwide strategic organization directs 9 major subordinate commands comprised of over 50 brigades, 70,000 soldiers and civilian employees, and AMC manages over 60% of our Army's budget. AMC is the single operational headquarters responsible for the Army's material integrator, and they also serve as the Army's strategic logistics provider. Bottom line, the AMC exists to provide material readiness to our Army, ensuring that our soldiers remain the best equipped fighting force in the world. Now, as one of 9 major subordinate commands, Army Sustainment Command, General Gamble, has a worldwide mission to synchronize the life cycle management commands, which we'll describe here shortly. ASC delivers enterprise logistics support to the field through the Army Field Support Brigades, also the contract support brigades, management of Army pre-position stocks, and strategic sourcing solutions like LOGCAP, the Logistics Civilian Augmentation Program. Some of you may be familiar with the LOGCAP providers. If you've seen their displays here, Fluor, DynCorp, KBR, and others, they're supporting our operations around the world today. Next slide. So throughout the briefing, you'll hear me refer to the enterprise, or our partners in the LCMCs. LCMC stands for Life Cycle Management Command. Some of those are listed for you here. They include TACOM, the Tank and Automotive Command. TACOM has a huge portfolio and is responsible for over 60% of the entire brigade combat team's equipment. They manage the majority of our Army repair parts, and they also run multiple depots that produce and restore major combat systems like tanks and cannons. AMCOM, the Aviation and Missile Command. Every helicopter that the Army flies, think Apache, Chinook, Black Hawk, as well as the Patriot and the THAAD missile systems that you've heard about so much in the news lately, is under the purview of AMCOM. CCOM, or the Communications and Electronic Command, manages all of our radios, satellite communications, terminal operations, down to the individual radio that the soldiers operate with on the battlefield. And finally, Joint Munitions Command. JMC provides ready, reliable, and lethal munitions for our Army and joint partners. They also direct munitions plants and chemical demilitarization operations in our country. These LCMCs are all AMC General Officer Commands that work with the Army acquisition, logistics, and technology community to manage the entire cradle to grave of life cycle, from fielding through procurement, through sustainment, and then finally the ultimate disposition for our weapons and equipment systems. AMC operationalizes all of these commands with the ASALT community to provide a unity of command, unity of purpose, and management of the strategic supply chains. They enhance overall supply availability of what's on hand in our warehouses to maintain these systems, and also build that equipment on hand, meaning the formations have more equipment that they're authorized to go forward and do their mission. And finally, our partners in the Defense Logistics Agency. They provide over 80% of our common repair parts, all of our bulk petroleum and energy products, as well as the operational rations that we use to field our forces. Taken together, these agencies represent what we collectively call the material enterprise. Next slide, please. So I will say that for my commanding general, I know that the sun never sets on ASC. Headquartered at Rock Island Arsenal, ASC's units are regionally aligned around the world to best support our warfighting formations. Within the continental United States, support brigades, Army Field Support Brigades, are allocated 1 per corps. Outside the continental United States, we have an AFSB with each Army Service Component Command or Field Army. From the headquarters at Rock Island, ASC executes the Army's equipping strategy, managing the disposition and transfer instructions for every piece of equipment in the Army, from the fielding all the way through modernization efforts, getting our equipment into the hands of the warfighter. One of the most critical missions that ASC manages is our Army pre-position stocks, both afloat and land-based. These APS equipment sets are managed by specialized Army Field Support Battalions outside the continental U.S., and we'll discuss APS a little more in just a few moments. ASC leads total force partners to include a Reserve Army Field Support Brigade, a LOGCAP Support Brigade, and an ASC Reserve element, with over 16 brigade headquarters, some 35,000 soldiers and employees worldwide, all working together to deliver that enterprise material readiness at the operational and tactical points of need. Next slide, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I have the privilege of commanding the 407th Army Field Support Brigade, headquartered at Fort Hood, Texas, in support of our 3rd Mobile Armored Corps. The 3rd Corps is comprised of our premier heavy divisions, to include the 1st Infantry Division, 4th Infantry, 1st Armored, and 1st Cavalry Division. When I include the separate brigades, the TRADOC units, as well as the Army Test and Evaluation Commands that we support, On a daily basis, the 407th, as part of ASC, is supporting over 116,000 soldiers. Our brigade area of responsibility is 14-state region, largely throughout the Midwest and the South, but I'm also regionally aligned with U.S. Southcom. Therefore, we have logistics readiness centers in Sotocano, Honduras, as well as Puerto Rico, supporting the Caribbean as a power projection platform. And as you can imagine, our team there is heavily involved in the defense support to civil authorities as we recover from the Hurricane Maria catastrophe. Altogether, the 407th has over 5,400 team members, including soldiers, Department of the Army civilians, and contract partners that man our Army Field Support battalions and logistics readiness centers. Our battalions are aligned with each of the divisions that I just mentioned, with embedded brigade logistics support team all the way down to the BCT, the combined aviation brigades, the combat aviation brigades, and the special forces groups. Our 14 logistics readiness centers highlighted here support all of the garrison commanders' installation maintenance, supply, and transportation requirements. Next slide, please. Now, what I'd ask you to take away from this link diagram is that the value of the Army Field Support Brigade is drawn from the one-stop shop support network that we provide to our warfighters and our installation commanders. When I think about delivering enterprise readiness, I think about both sides of a readiness coin, if you will. I support the warfighter requirements largely through our Army Field Support battalions down to the division and down to the brigade combat team level. And then the flip side of that readiness coin is the support our LRC directors provide to the garrison and senior commanders at each of our Army installations throughout the continental U.S. At Echelon, my brigade provides the 3-Corps commander with a single Army Materiel Command point of contact to effect change and provide any needed material support. Likewise, my AFS battalion commanders do that at the division level. Now, the support structure continues down trace to the brigade logistics support team level, where our blast chiefs deliver logistics assistance representatives from each of those LCMCs that I previously mentioned. Those LARs, as they're called, are absolutely critical. They're master mechanics and trainers that support our soldiers on these highly complex systems to keep them in the fight. Tanks, howitzers, helicopters, satellite terminals, all the way down to the individual radios, machine guns, and optics that our soldiers use and rely on to execute their daily mission. And our LRC directors provide logistics support to those garrison commanders through a Department of the Army civilian and contracted workforce, primarily in the areas of supply maintenance, transportation, as well as power projection and mobilization support. Next slide, please. Again, a little bit of a diagram about how we work a pitch and catch support concept from the CONUS base to the OCONUS AFSBs, and how we really augment those FORCECOM level forces that we're familiar with, the divisions, the support brigades, the BSBs, and down to that forward support company. The AFSBs provide another level of material support to our deployed forces. On a weekly basis, I conference with our OCONUS sister brigades to forecast the equipment readiness and the requirements that we see for the next rotational brigades deploying to our various COCOMs. We support pre-deployment logistics surveys, and we also facilitate lessons learned and knowledge transfer events. As an example, when we deployed the 3rd Brigade 4ID to Europe, that deployment went into Europe. 405th AFSB's area of responsibility, and my partner there, Rod Honeycutt, captured all the best practices as well as the shortfalls from that deployment, and then he came back to Fort Riley, Kansas, to assist us with that pre-deployment planning for the next heel-to-toe rotation going into Europe, the 2nd Brigade, 1st Infantry Division that we had pictured on our first slide. As discussed just a few minutes ago, here in the CONUS, each corps has an AFSB, and OCONUS, every Army Service Component Command, so General Garrett, who just preceded us in speaking, has a dedicated Army Field Support Brigade, in his case, the 401st in Kuwait. As a gauge of the op tempo that 3 Corps is sustaining right now, we have 4 deployed Armored Brigade combat teams every day of the year, year-round, deployed to Europe, to Southwest Asia, and to Korea. So as you can imagine, to maintain that 3 forward presence ABCT, we've constantly got 9 Armored Brigade combat teams in the training, ready, and deploy cycles. The forward presence of these 3 ABCTs gives a great example to how we operationalize this pitch and catch support concept on a daily basis around the world, and ASC is driving that from Rock Island headquarters. ASC headquarters also is called on to quite often deliver a portion of or a complete brigade combat team set worth of equipment from our Army pre-positioned stocks. If I could have the next slide, please. These Army pre-positioned stocks, or APS as they're called, represent a key component of our Army's strategic mobility capability and how we are able to provide prompt land power around the world. Army Sustainment Command maintains and executes the Army's APS operations around the world with both land-based and sea-based stocks through OCONUS AFSBs and specialized APS AFS battalions. These APS sites provide combat platforms and sustainment stocks in support of combatant commander contingency operations, land-based stocks in Europe, Northeast Asia, and Southwest Asia provide the support for designated O-plans, and then afloat APS stocks provide flexibility for emerging requirements. ASC also manages operational project stocks for humanitarian assistance and other theater sustainment stocks for designated contingency plans. ASC is leading the Army's efforts to enhance the readiness of these APS stocks by modernizing the equipment and the systems that sustain them. These efforts continue to enhance the deterrence value in wartime readiness of this critical Army capability in support of our combatant commanders. Next slide. Okay, sir, I gave it a shot. I apologize for how busy this slide is, but there's a lot packed here. It's something we're very proud of, and it articulates, I hope, some of the support that we provide to our rotational forces. Over the last 3 years, many of you may know, the Army has reintroduced rotational armored brigade combat teams to Europe in support of our NATO alliance. We're now on our third rotation of these back-to-back deployments with 2-1-ID replacing 3-4. The deployment cycle support to these rotational brigades provides a great insight and opportunity to understand how AFSBs deliver material readiness. At home station for Fort Carson for 3-4-ID, our preparations there included our logistics readiness centers conducting significant modifications to over 160 pieces of equipment to meet European hazmat requirements. We worked with ASC and AMC's logistics support agency to enhance the tactical warehouse loadout, and we partnered with industry, BOH Container Solutions, to optimize how these warehouses operate on the move. We worked with CCOM to reconfigure the entire brigade set of over 900 battle command systems to get them configured for the European network. TACOM and DLA both prioritize repair parts and enhance their European stockage and distribution networks for an armored formation for the first time in over 10 years. With the support of SDDC and the 21st TSC in Europe, these deployments of these brigades have improved with each iteration. SDDC provides planning conferences and embeds their support teams at the ports to enhance the speed of the loadout and the discharge of equipment in Europe. Each of these ABCTs has over 2,000 pieces of equipment, all that have to be railloaded, shipped, downloaded, and onward moved in the gaining COCOM's area of responsibility. In Europe, the 405th also issued a portion of the APS on reception for support to the 3-4-ID, and along with the 21st TSC oversaw the vast expansion of supply networks and distribution nodes into the Baltics, Poland, and Eastern Europe. LogCap played a huge role in supporting the base camp life support and maintenance of those forces, well outside the normal German landscape that our forces have been accustomed to in Europe. In preparation for their redeployment, we've coordinated with the combat system program managers to upgrade the tanks, the howitzers, the commo systems for the brigade immediately on redeployment to Fort Carson. And in slightly different methodology than we used during the ARFRGen, we're sustaining that brigade's readiness by doing all the work there while the unit's taking block leave. We'll have contract labor go in, work the modifications for these systems, and immediately deliver that at Fort Carson to the 4th Infantry Division Commander so he can begin his road to war to get this brigade combat team on track for their next worldwide deployment. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned LRCs a couple of times. These are key sustainment hubs on Army installations that provide all the supply, maintenance, and transportation support required by our garrison and senior commanders. Our LRC directors, normally very senior Department of the Army civilians, manage the receipt, storage, and issue of all the supply stocks to include food, bulk fuel, and munitions. They run central issue facilities, which provide the personal kit from boots to backpacks to the body armor and the uniforms that our soldiers wear. They also provide property management support and the maintenance of emergency and engineering equipment on every one of our Army installations, things like ambulances, fire engines, the road maintenance equipment for their garrison commanders. Every time that a soldier PCSs or does a permanent change of station and moves from one post to another, the LRC provides the transportation support and movement of household goods and baggage all around the world. Our LRCs manage those installation transportation nodes that include airfields, railheads, commercial line haul operations, and they, therein, really provide the heart and soul of our Army power projection platforms. That AP3 represents our most significant contribution to the Army's core mission of deploying and providing prompt and sustained land power. If I could have the next slide, please. So force projection is our #1 LRC core competency, at least for my brigade and by and large the CONUS Army Field Support Brigades. This becomes more critical with a largely CONUS-based force. Our credibility and deterrence abroad and the ability to provide prompt and sustained land power is tied to our ability to rapidly deploy active forces and then simultaneously mobilize and subsequently deploy our Reserve and National Guard forces. Maximizing our Army power projection platforms requires that our installation trans offices synchronize all operations, strategic rail, strategic airlift, commercial line haul, in conjunction with our partners at SDDC. We also have to be prepared to provide immediate strategic lift by air for select equipment and personnel that are directly supporting our global response force mission sets. As with all of our operations, it's a team event. These LRCs partner directly with the Surface Deployment and Distribution Command, which is the Army component of U.S. Transportation Command. We've increased the pace of our operations to both training center and overseas deployments. Our most recent deployment to Europe saw an overall reduction in the strategic deployment timeline by some 36%. This was achieved by deliberate planning, 24/7 outload operations, the great support of our commercial rail partners, and the SDDC operating around the clock with stevedores and contracted support at our strategic seaports of embarkation. Our LRCs are absolutely essential to the success of our Army in providing prompt land power around the world. Next slide, please. Okay. So we all know that job #1 is readiness, supporting the current fight. As the 8th Army on the Korean Peninsula will tell you, we have to be ready to fight tonight. And as General Garrett said, some of our soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places are fighting as we speak. We also have to look to the future and continuously adapt and improve not only our doctrine and our education, our training, but also our material solutions. AMC scientists and engineers in the Research and Development Command are constantly working with materials and technologies to improve everything from our food, our munitions, the armor that we wear, the parachutes we fall from the sky from, and the packaging for our repair parts. They're exploring hybrid drive systems. They're looking at water production. They're looking at additive manufacturing in austere environments so that we can deliver these material solutions. In partnership with the Training and Doctrine Command and the Sustainment Center of Excellence, we're exploring these logistic initiatives on a daily basis. We're also supporting the ASALT community and TRADOC in an ongoing series of network integration evaluations and joint warfighting assessments at Fort Bliss, Texas, and other locations around the world. The NIEs look at the connectivity, the ones and the zeros, of sophisticated mission command technologies that are operating on a contested and congested cyber spectrum battlefield. We also examine joint and coalition interoperability in the joint warfighting assessments. The next JWA will take place in Europe. As we mentioned, the 21ID, who's currently deployed there, will serve as the experimental force in a NATO setting, taking the JWA on the road from Fort Bliss, Texas, to overseas for the first time. While those ASALT and TRADOC efforts look at equipment formations, we also support U.S. Army Cadet Command and the West Point, the military academy, and their cadet summer training at both Fort Knox and at West Point. For the cadet summer training, just as a quick vignette, our LRC at Fort Knox, Kentucky, as well as our logistics support team there, sustains over 16,000 cadets, cadre, and OPFOR forces every year, annually, from April through August, training our next generation of Army leaders. And Doug, if we get a chance to talk in the question and answer period, also supports U.S. Military Academy in his area of responsibility with the 406 AFSP. If I could have the last slide. In closing, we've rapidly covered how AFSBs, as part of Army Sustainment Command and the AMC enterprise, utilize AFS battalions and LRCs to deliver material readiness to warfighting formations in our installations. I tried to briefly paint the picture of how we provide a strategic sustainment network that sustains global force employment for our Army formations. A key feature of this network is how Army Field Support Brigades provide a pitch and catch support network and connectivity to support these rotational brigade combat teams. We talked a little bit about how ASC and the AFSB formations support preparation and deployment from home station, and how the OCONUS AFSBs support APS, RSOI, and LOGCAP operations overseas. We discussed the critical role of our logistics readiness centers and how they play a driving role in supporting the engine that is our Army power projection platforms. And we touched just briefly on how AMC supports the ASALT community and TRADOC in developing our technology and our leaders for the future. We do all these things through partnership, leveraging the entire enterprise to anticipate needs as we synchronize, integrate, and deliver material readiness solutions in support of the Chief of Staff of the Army's priorities and our combatant commanders' requirements. That's how we remain Army strong. I really appreciate your attention. I look forward to your comments. Would appreciate your insights, and I will attempt to answer any questions you may have, and if not, I have fellow AFSB commanders and our commanding general here to bail me out. So, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Sorry. What is your number one issue in getting readiness to the soldiers? Is it money? Is it pipeline? What is the biggest problem that you experience?
So we've got to gauge my response on where I sit in the overall organization, right? I'm a brigade commander and I'm supporting a heavy armored corps. I would tell you it's a little bit of all of the above, all right? Over the past 16 years plus of conflict, we have seen the erosion in some of our core competencies organically and our ability to sustain our systems. We've seen from an industrial supply chain basis the rollback of some of the investment we've had in our overall supply chain availability, and we've seen some manning issues, frankly, in our formation. So as we talked about, 2,000 pieces of equipment in an Armored Brigade combat team, if they don't have full crews, if they can't get out into the motor pools and do preventative maintenance checks and services on every piece of equipment on a weekly basis, we're going to see that equipment atrophy. I'll tell you, there's one other wrinkle to that. There's a lot of Army formations that have more than just what their authorization document says they're supposed to have. They have additional fleets, MRAPs, other equipment that we've brought back that was theater-provided equipment for our OCONUS mission sets. We sustain that to train on it. But sometimes that's the expense of that number one precious commodity, which is time. So I hate to give you generalizations, but really there are a lot of elements that play into what challenges readiness. But I will tell you, some of it's time, a little bit of it's money, because frankly, we are still a very well-resourced Army, but we need that predictable funding going forward from a macro level so that we can employ and enhance and bring up those supply chain availability rates. I think if we get all the parts, repair parts into the hands of our maintainers, we'll get those soldiers regreened and trained, our warrant officers, our non-commissioned officers and soldiers will be very successful going forward. There are a couple of things that challenge us, and sir, I'll turn it over to you for other amplifying comments.
Yeah, so, pardon me. So readiness, delivering readiness, right? You know, I can just give you 3 priority efforts we're doing. And Colonel Shirley's exactly right? There's no silver bullet. It's a really layered effect of different capabilities at the tactical, operational, and strategic level. So I said we're partners in readiness because, you know, we expect the whole Army depends on everybody doing their job at echelon and doing it with a reflexive level of competency. And so, you know, and everybody knows, in many cases, the Army's rebuilding some of those competencies as we shift towards less theater-provided equipment, more units taking equipment to, you know, their rotational missions or their operational missions overseas. So at the tactical level, one of the key components of that is supply availability, right? So now, it's not the only thing, right, but it is a key component of readiness. And so what we're doing to attack that is Army Materiel Command is fielding Common Core ASL, as we call it. So we're going away from a demand-based model to a more analytical model that says this is the highest demand of these repair parts, and then we're going to stock supply support activities at the tactical level inside of brigades with the Common Core ASL. So not a demand-supported model, because that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you fell on a theater-provided equipment a year ago, then your demand reflects that, right? You have almost zero demand when you come home. So right now we fielded 12 Armor Brigade combat teams, 12 Armor and Infantry Brigade combat teams across Forces Command. We'll continue to do that for the next couple of years. We'll get it to Infantry, Armor, and Striker. Eric mentioned BOH containers. We're purchasing containers. BOH just happens to be the company we're buying them from right now to make that ASL mobile, right? So that a Armor Brigade, an Infantry Brigade, and eventually a Striker Brigade can lift their ASL and move it forward with them to the point of need. And so we're buying those containers for them right now. So as we're delivering that capability, we're not making recommendations to other people how to spend their money. We're delivering that capability, and that's being delivered through our AFSBs. At the operational level, you think about Army pre-position stocks, right? So where we're headed with Army pre-position stocks is to increase the capability, and what we call it is configure it for combat. And so arguably today, our Army pre-position stocks provide a capability by pre-positioning armor brigades, infantry brigades, sustainment brigades, and other enabling commands forward in a battle space, so units could then leave their equipment home and fly and fall in on the equipment. But the truth is the to accompany troops equipment listing is pretty extensive, right? For an armor brigade, it includes much of their command and control systems, all their radars, all those perishable items that need refreshed, whether they're refreshed with software or they just require a little bit more tender loving care than a tank. And so that TAT requirement is fairly significant today, and it has been since the conception of the Army pre-position stocks for years. So where we're headed with that is no TAT, right? And so it'll be a multi-year approach where we try to eliminate the requirement for units to bring equipment from home station into the theater to employ our Army pre-position stocks, those equipment sets. This year, we'll hit no TAT for armored or tracked combat vehicles. Next year, we're aiming at wheeled combat vehicles, MRAP type family. We'll work all tracked vehicles, which will be hard because that's where the C2 tracks are, you know, the command and control tracks that require a lot of TAT today. And so we're partnering with the Army, and its real General Perna's vision is zero TAT, so that a unit could literally take their individual weapons, their individual mask, and their individual gear, follow on APS, and roll out the gates, and it's ready to fight. So that's a multi-year approach at the operational level that we're rolling out, and we've been working that now for a couple months. So I think in terms of readiness, it really depends on what level you are. Right now, our main effort at tactical readiness is supply availability through Common Core ASL. At the operational level, Army Service Component Commands, it's given them a more refined capability in terms of Army pre-position stocks. Kind of at the strategic level, we're transitioning our LOGCAP logistics civilian augmentation program from LOGCAP 4 to LOGCAP 5. Right, we're having an industry day at Rock Island later this month, where we'll answer questions on the draft RFP. But it'll fundamentally change how we view LOGCAP. Right, it's always been a capability to provide commanders, operational commanders, the ability to contract for capabilities they don't have. LOGCAP 5 will transition us to more of a set the theater construct. So to enable Army Service Component Commands to set their theater with contracted capability ahead of a tip-fid flow, so they don't have to bring in units to conduct RSOI. They could, if they choose, employ a contracted capability to conduct RSOI. And so LOGCAP 5, which we'll award next year in FY18, will head us in that direction towards a more of set the theater capability than what it is today, which is really after an operation starts, how do we provide endurance to the United States Army to continue to rotate forces into a theater by contracting those services and those capabilities that we need that we're short in force structure. So we'll continue to do that piece, but it'll be more focused on setting the theater to enable the rapid deployment and the rapid reception of forces in theaters where we're doing operations or in theaters of war. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Good morning, sir. Major Brian Moran. I'm actually from Rock Island, Illinois, so Rock Island Arsenal is near and dear to my heart. I'm an acquisition officer, and I was wondering, what does the acquisition corps and the program offices bring to the fight at the tactical, operational, and strategic level?
So again, at Echelon, I will tell you where I am at the Corps headquarters at Fort Hood, Texas. You know, the PM team is generating the 15th Armored Brigade Combat Team. That effort's just about done. That's going to be shipped out to the 3rd Infantry Division stage is being set for incorporating more equipment to generate a 16th ABCT. We work hand in hand with the PM shops across the spectrum, whether we're talking with the CCOM team and maintaining our C4 ISR systems, how we manage those upgrades for the various inks, to projecting what those training requirements are going to be for our soldiers and maintainers in our combat formation. So I work very closely with Lieutenant Colonel Shell from PM shop as we look at how we are going to see changes when we get to that SEP V3 tank. When we get to future additions to capability, whether that's lethality, mobility, or protection on our combat platforms, so that we can train our LARs, get them in the fight, and have them as ready or more ready than the soldiers they're assisting and training out in the motor pools and at our combat training centers, and most importantly downrange, if that answers your question. Sir, if you have any closing comments, I really appreciate everybody's attention and appreciate the questions this morning, sir.
Okay, so Command Sergeant Major Ulof is the Army Sustainment Command Command Sergeant Major. He'll be happy to meet with you, answer any questions. Doug Levian is our AFSB Commander at Fort Bragg. So please, if you weren't brave enough to answer a question, you got some question you didn't want to ask in public, either corral one of us four, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. Thanks for the brave souls who asked questions today. For the ASALT brother, where did he go? There you are. So one of the things we're focused on, I'll leave it at this, is, right, ASALT brings great capability to the field, right? The program managers are trying to stay on the leading edge technology, upgrade systems. Program managers and PEOs are responsible for the whole life cycle of equipment. And I think they deliver great capability. Where we're focused and where we're partnered is when the new capability arrives in a unit, the old capability goes away that same day, right? And that's not something we've done in the past. And so we're tied at the hip on this effort, right? So when the new capability comes, it's at the right cycle for the right unit. Instead of we're going to come to Fort Bragg one time and we're going to dump all the whatevers on Fort Bragg, right? It's going to cost more money. It's going to cost more money, more time to deliver capability when it best enhances the readiness of a unit. And at the same time, we take away, and that's where our LRCs and our AFSB commanders are involved, is we remove the old stuff so that unit commanders aren't trying to maintain the legacy fleet as they get new equipment fielding and new equipment training. And so we're trying to make that happen, and that's been a priority now for better part of a year at least. And I think we're getting pretty good effects so that we don't leave the old mortar, the old radar in the motor pool and have the unit burdened with that while we figure out what the disposition instructions are. We're taking that away the same day. And General Perna's charter is you don't field it unless you're taking the old stuff the same day. So it's those kinds of initiatives where we're trying to unburden units so they can take and rebuild their competency and maintain a high level readiness at tactical level. So thanks for your comments and thanks for your attendance today.